Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of Mindset 101. Today we're gonna go into details. Buckle up, my friends. We have a lot to cover today. We're gonna get hyper specific. And the big thing that I want you to take away from all of this is a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And at the end of this, what I want you to be empowered to do is develop a growth mindset. It's gonna be a process, but it is a very doable process. Now, I wanna remind you of the quote that we talked about in the first class, which is from Einstein, and it's all about the most important decision you're ever gonna make. And that decision is whether we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. And the reason that I harp on this quote is, one, it seems like something that is either just true or not. And I want you guys to understand at the most foundational building block level is a decision. And all of this is a decision. And deciding whether something is objectively true or subjectively true is pretty irrelevant. When you're building your mindset, you really have to simply decide that it's possible. And the reason that you have to decide that, the reason that I highly encourage you to believe, to decide to believe that you live in a friendly universe, is that's going to give you the energy to move forward because you believe that your efforts are going to be rewarded. It's often what I refer to as the only belief that matters, that your energies are going to be rewarded. All right, now I have another quote for you. This one is trite, it's super cheesy, but it is also insanely powerful, and it comes from Henry Ford. And he said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. I live by that maxim. I know you guys have heard it 1,000 times, but really, really internalize it. This is one of those things that when we talk about a fixed mindset, I promise you, I see people come back to this all the time. And here at Impact Theory, this is one of those things that we call each other out on from time to time. Even I will find myself slipping back into a fixed mindset, and someone has to call me out and say, hey, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So just remember that as you go through this and it seems overwhelming, or you're going through anything and it seems overwhelming, just remember, it all starts with that belief. Now, let's take it out of the ether and let's pull it down and make it highly actionable. When you have a fixed mindset, it means that you believe you were born with it, that your talent and intelligence are just inborn traits. When you have a growth mindset, you believe that they're malleable. Now, I really, really wish that I had Carol Dweck's immortal book, which I consider the most foundational book, the most important book in the English language. It is the book that you should start with if you're going to read. So I want to quote her directly. I think that she has such a profound understanding of this, and she is a researcher and professor at Stanford University. The growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts, your strategies, and help from others. Although people may differ in every which way in their initial talents and aptitudes, interests, or temperaments, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. She goes on to say, in a fixed mindset, students believe their basic abilities, their intelligence, their talents are just fixed traits. They have a certain amount and that's that, and their goal becomes to look smart all the time and never look dumb. In a growth mindset, students understand that their talents and abilities can be developed through effort, good teaching, and persistence. They don't necessarily think everyone's the same or anyone can be Einstein, but they believe everyone can get smarter if they work at it. Let that sink in. I'm not saying we're blank slates. I talked about that in the first part. We're all different. We all learn at different speeds. We all have advantages in one area or another, and it can be very, very frustrating when something that's important to us also happens to align in an area where we suck. But I want you to understand, even though you may never be Einstein, even though you may never be Jordan or Kobe or whoever it is that you look up to, you can always get better. And one of my favorite examples, if you guys are basketball fans, which ironically I'm not, but I know this example, there was a guy that played against Jordan whose name was Muggsy Bogues. Muggsy Bogues was 5'3". 5'3" is the shortest player ever to play in the NBA. And he had an extraordinary career from a stats perspective. He's one of the best that ever played the game. And he did it all while being 5'3", and he just fucking outworked people. He put in the work. He hustled his ass off. He didn't take no for an answer. And part of it was he grew up in the inner cities, and he so desperately wanted a way out that he chose to believe that no matter what people told him, no matter the fact that the deck seemed stacked against him, that even though he may never be better than Jordan, that he could become extraordinary. And that's what I want you guys to believe. Again, it's the only belief that matters. Once you believe that you can get good at something, that you can get great, that you can even become extraordinary through an inhuman amount of effort, then you'll take the steps. Why? Because you know your efforts will be rewarded with results. That is the most important thing for you to believe, that your energies are going to be rewarded, because then you'll move forward. All right, here are the required beliefs if you're going to build a growth mindset: that you're roughly average. I don't need you to believe that you're extraordinary. Most of us are hopelessly average. That's what I'm always telling people. I was hopelessly average when I started. Nobody expected me to succeed. When I was growing up, nobody pointed at me and said, hey, that's going to be the kid that's going to do something with his life. My own mother, who's always been my biggest cheerleader, when I left for college, she quietly assumed I was going to fail. It was pretty hysterical. I didn't want to go to college. Not that I didn't want to go to college, but I didn't want to leave the state. I had this moment of panic. All my friends were going to a state school. I wanted to stay home. And it was my mother that kicked me out of the nest and all but forced me to leave. And then it's been every day since then trying to claw me back. And so one day I just asked her, Mom, why did you kick me out of the nest if you were just gonna so desperately try to get me back? And she said, with absolutely no malice, I just always assumed you were going to fail. And I didn't want you to wonder, what if? And that was actually a really powerful gift for me, to be put in that perspective, to know that the person who cheered me on the loudest, just based on my behaviors, based on how lazy I was, based on how little work and energy I put into my life, didn't think I was going to be successful. My best friend recently, this was a really fun conversation, and my wife was right there, was there. I have witnesses. He said, yeah, dude, I just always assumed you were going to marshmallow, that's his quote, you were going to marshmallow your way through life. My father-in-law, when I went to ask for his blessing to marry his daughter, he said no, because he didn't think I was going to be able to take care of his daughter. Now, the important thing to realize about all these people is they did not misidentify me. They were accurate in assuming that based on my behaviors at that time, that I was not going to go on to be successful. And it is only because I finally cobbled together a growth mindset and began to believe, I decided that I lived in a friendly universe. I decided that the brain was plastic, that I could learn new things, that it wasn't set in stone at my birth. I decided to believe that my energies were going to be rewarded. So that is that foundation that you need. So all you need to do is believe that you are roughly average, that average is enough, that beliefs themselves are malleable. This is a big one. A lot of people don't understand that your beliefs, we talked about this in the first course, one of the things that hold people back is their beliefs accrue by accident, and they're not taking control of that. So you want to remember that many of the beliefs that you have in your life as of right now have been cobbled together by accident. You don't realize that they are things that you've chosen to believe. They seem like fact, but you need to begin to question all of these. So you need to believe that your beliefs are changeable. So as you go through this process, if I say something that you think, I could never do that, that is the very belief that you have to begin to change. Going back to our nice cheesy trite quote from Henry Ford, whether you believe you can or you can't, you are right. So we're going to be going through how to take those beliefs and adapt them. All right, your ability to grow and adapt, that's huge. You have to believe in that. We talked about that. It's the one belief that matters. The brain can change. That is another huge thing that is absolutely tied to you believing in yourself and your ability to get better. And for me, being able to imagine the process, and it's outside the scope of this class, but I highly encourage you guys to go research that and watch some of the videos as the way that neurons connect to each other and the way that connections are formed and learning happens. Being able to imagine is very powerful. But for right now, you're going to choose to believe that the brain can change. And you need to believe that the brain changes via disciplined practice. So simply doing something over and over and over, that isn't going to do it. You've got to go into the areas that you're weak. I know everybody wants to practice the things that they're good at. And so that becomes just blind repetition. That's not what we're talking about. Improvement happens via disciplined practice, breaking things down to their constituent parts, picking the things that you are bad at, practicing them in a disciplined fashion until you are better. That's the way that you're going to level up your game. And speaking of leveling up your game, action cures all. You are not going to get better by pontificating. You're not going to find out whether you love something enough to really go after it by thinking about it. You're going to answer these big questions in your life by taking action. And we're going to talk about a massive bias towards action a little bit later. The other thing you need to believe is there is always a solution. Once you get in that frame of reference that every problem you face can be solved If you are ingenious enough, if you ask enough people, if you read enough books, there is a solution. And if you go into it with that, you will be shocked how inventive you can get. And if you find that you struggle with that, at least believing there is a solution is going to lead you to seek out experts in the field to ask and answer those questions. That is so important. I can't tell you, that sits, if you were to peel open my chest, glowing inside of my soul, you would see that notion glowing inside of me, because I really believe there's always a solution. And when you approach things from that perspective, you just find things past the point where everybody else gave up. So that one's huge. All right, the word yet is real. Yet is real. What do I mean by that? You suck at this thing now. Fine. I'm willing to accept that. You're hopelessly average. It's absolutely okay. There's going to be a laundry list of shit that you love, that you want to be amazing at, that you're not good at yet. And once you put that word yet on the end, everything changes, because it reminds you, I have the chills, it reminds you there's always a solution. It reminds you that the brain is plastic, that you can get better at anything through disciplined practice. And so once you begin attaching that word yet, you're going to be shocked. You go from having this this gut reaction, this trigger of insecurities, all this landslide of shit that piles on top of your mind because you're feeling badly about yourself. You want to hide from the fact that you're not good at this thing that you value, or the people that you respect are far better than you at something that you really want to be the best at. But you can protect your self-esteem just by amending that phrase, I'm not good at this yet. And that will really open you up. And the last thing I want to talk about is the belief that human potential is nearly limitless. Now, I created a belief system. It's written down. You can get it for free. And it's the 25 beliefs that you need to really empower yourself. And the number one is human potential is nearly limitless. And the reason that you want to cultivate that belief all goes back to the only belief that matters, which is that your efforts are going to be rewarded. So it's worth putting in the time and the energy. And when you stop worrying about the upper limit, you stop worrying about whether you're going to be the next Jordan, you stop worrying about the laws of physics. It's hysterical. I used to say human potential is limitless, and people started wasting their time and mine by debating where that upper ceiling is. Sure, fine, there's an upper limit. I don't give a shit. The distance between where you are today and that upper limit is so fucking crazy far, you're just better acting as if there is no limit. So approach everything with the mindset that human potential is nearly limitless. All right, now it is time to get deep in the weeds. I want to give you guys the exact things that you're going to need to do to actually build a growth mindset. And I want you to know this is a process. It is not something that's going to happen overnight, but in putting the time and energy into this, you are literally going to be able to rewire your brain. And on the other side of this, have a different form to your brain, a different function, and be able to believe in yourself, be able to execute on your dreams, stay open to criticism, and develop. And it's all going to start with taking total ownership of your life. This is one area that I feel a lot of people fall down. And the reason is life is hard. It is so difficult to look at yourself and to say, my life is an exact reflection of my choices. I'm not a victim of circumstance. I'm not succumbing to luck or all the things that are happening around me. I am in control of my life. I have made decisions that have led me exactly here. Now, the reason that that is difficult is because life is so difficult, because we are all going to be victimized. It is very tempting to say that the bad things that have happened to me are something that are happening to me from the outside. But once we take total ownership, we realize one incredibly powerful thing. We can always make a different decision and get a different outcome. Once you understand that, then your mind goes immediately to that notion of there's always a solution. You're looking for the path forward. You're looking for the thing that you need to learn. You're looking for what you need to change. You're looking for the path that's different, that's going to take you away from where you are. And where you're holding on to the power, you're realizing you could make a different decision and get a different outcome. You stay in active mode. And like I said before, action cures everything. But when you feel that you're a victim from things oppressing you from the outside, then you stop. Then you stay still. Then you become stagnant. And all of the things that you want for your life never happen because you never put in the energy. So starting with total ownership, that's the absolutely critical thing. My favorite story to tell around this is, imagine this. My wife is British, true story. Now imagine that my wife is home in England with her mom. She's in the house that she grew up in. She's safe and sound. The doors are locked. The alarm is on. But then right then, a meteorite comes screaming through the atmosphere, smashes through the roof, and kills my wife. Whose fault is that? Now, if you don't know me and you're not trying to guess at what I think, your answer is probably going to be, it's nobody's fault, it's dumb luck, divine providence, just fate. Like, it didn't have to do with anybody's choices. But I will tell you right now, there's only one person to blame for that, and that is me. Now, why do I say that? One, just to remind myself that I could make different decisions that could have a different outcome, to remind myself that I'm still in a powerful position. I can change and adapt. But also because, and this is real, there is an organization right now that track what are called near-Earth objects. I know they exist, and they're looking for a way to knock a meteorite off course that is going to collide with Earth to make sure that we're always safe, whether it's lasers or planted nuclear explosion. Now, I know they exist, and I've never done anything to assist. I haven't sent them a dime of money. I've never sent them an email with encouraging ideas. I've never called them on the phone just to clap and encourage them. Nothing. Now, I think that's the right answer. I think that the likelihood of my wife being killed by a meteorite is so vanishingly slim that it doesn't make sense to put any time and energy into it. But I'm even on the board of the X Prize, and we had an opportunity to vote for a prize that would help deflect things like that from crashing into the Earth, and I voted against it. So, should my wife, God forbid, be killed by a meteorite, I would not waste time blaming other people. I would look solely at myself, not to beat myself up, not to be harsh on myself, only to remember one simple fact, that when you own your life, when you take responsibility for your decisions, you're always remembering, in making a different decision, you get a different outcome. And when you hit a roadblock, that is going to be so important to look at how you can improve, because you cannot control other people. You cannot control the world. So the one thing that you can control is you. And so if you give up power over the one thing that you actually can control, then you really are at the mercy of the world. And if you want to get somewhere in life, you cannot allow yourself to give away your power and be at the mercy of others. All right, the next thing that's critically important is to understand that what you build your self-esteem around matters. So the very basis of your self-esteem is a choice. Now, you want to talk about something that seems invisible, that people believe. Self-esteem is simply about being good, being right, being smart, all of those things. Of course, obviously, if you're good at something, then you should have self-esteem. And if you're a total piece of shit, you shouldn't. But the reality is, what you value yourself on is A, a total option. It's a choice. You can pick from a whole slew of things. And B, it will impact the rest of your life. I used to value myself for being good, for being right, for being smart. And in doing that, I created a very fragile ego. Because when I encountered somebody that was smarter than I was, it made me feel badly about myself. When I was around people that had better ideas than I had, it made me feel badly about myself. When I messed up on something and didn't think that I was doing good, then I felt badly about myself. And all of these things were chipping away at my self-esteem, and they were putting me in this really weird position that Carol Dweck warns about, which is that fixed mindset where you just want to put yourself in positions where you shine. This is where I referred to myself as the king of remedial jobs, and where I was going and applying for jobs that I knew I was overqualified for because my ego was so tied up in somebody saying, "Man, you're so smart. Why are you here?" And I lived for that. And because I lived for that, my life was getting smaller and smaller. And it was far less than it could have been because I just wanted to feel good about myself. And understanding that that drive, that need that we all have to feel good about who we are is dangerous and full of potential. Because humans instinctively move towards pleasure and they move away from pain. So when your identity is built around, when your self-esteem is built around something that is fragile, like being smart or being talented, then you're always going to be in a weak position. And what ended up happening was I was in business. I was telling you guys about that in the first section. I got invited by these entrepreneurs and they said, you can have any job in the company that you want, but you have to become the right person for that role. I was really trying, but I was in way over my head. They knew so much more than I did. Everybody around me seemed to know more than I did. And I really felt stupid all the time. And I cannot tell you, that was really hard for me. And I had this one day because I was telling my wife, I'm going to make you rich. I told your dad, I will make her rich one day. I promise. And I was pouring my heart and soul into that. And I was so hell-bent to get rich. And I wanted to be successful so badly that I was just going. And then I hit this moment where I'm like, I fucking hate my life. I hate everything about my life. And everything about the people that I'm around makes me feel worse about myself. And I had this moment of crisis. And I was arguing with the guys who would end up becoming my business partners at the time. They were just my bosses. And I was arguing with him for an idea that I knew was worse. I knew it would move the company backwards, but I needed to win. I needed an idea that was mine to win. And so I was just fighting and fighting and fighting. And finally, they just relented. Not because I even think they thought it was a better idea, but they just didn't want to keep fighting with me about it. And in that moment, I had this crisis. I was like, fuck, do I really want to be successful? Am I really sincere when I tell my wife, I'm going to make you successful one day? Am I being honest with my father-in-law when I say, I will provide for your daughter? Or do I just want to feel good about myself? And the one thing I will give myself credit for in that moment, I didn't judge myself. And I just said, look, if what you really want is to just feel good about yourself, leave this company right now, go back to being the king of remedial jobs, because that really did feel good. And people telling me I was smart really did feel good. If, on the other hand, what you really want is you want to be successful, then you're going to have to suck it up and deal with not feeling good about yourself, because that's the only way that you're going to get better. And I realized that's never going to work. We need to feel good about ourselves. And so I thought, could I build my self-esteem around something else? And unfortunately, at the time, I had not read Nassim Taleb's book, Anti-Fragile, but now I can give you those words. And that brings us to our next point, which is you need to build an identity that is anti-fragile. And that starts with building your self-esteem around something that is anti-fragile. And the only thing that I've learned that will give you that truly anti-fragile mindset, identity, is to be a learner. Now, what anti-fragile is, there is things that are tough, there's things that are resilient, but both of those things are still defined by their breaking point. That breaking point may be very far away, but ultimately those things are defined by their breaking point. Something that is anti-fragile is something that grows stronger the more it's attacked. And being a learner is the only thing that I can think of that the more you attack it, the more resilient it becomes, the stronger and more robust it gets. So if you think about it, if I am stupid on something and somebody points that out and they say, oh man, you're so dumb. If my identity and my self-esteem is built around being smart, then in that moment I'm gonna break because I realize, fuck, I really did mess it up. I really did do something stupid. If, on the other hand, my ego is tied up in being a learner, then all of a sudden when somebody says, hey, you're stupid, I'm like, tell me more. Because if they tell me in what way I actually am stupid, and this is what I really do in my real life, by the way, is when something hits and it's like, oh, that stings, I think to myself, well, I've gotten this far being that stupid. This is going to be amazing. If they really can lift the veil from my eyes and I can see the way in which I have been mistaken, now, through disciplined practice, I can get better. I may not be good at this thing yet. And once I amend that and put myself back in that notion of there's always a solution, then you can begin to move forward. So that is so critical, to have an anti-fragile ego identity and to think of yourself as the learner, that the very thing you value yourself for is learning. That's the key. And so when I was in those positions, what I started to value myself for was being the first to admit that I was wrong. So if I thought I had the right idea, I would fight for it, for sure. But once I realized, ooh, actually that person has a better argument than me, then I would say, hey, that's a great idea. And I would put all my energy into that and I would give them credit for it. And in doing that, in it always being willing to admit when I was wrong, and then celebrating other people's ideas, and then really putting energy behind that, I began to earn a reputation as being somebody that wasn't in it for their ego. But the irony is, I was in it for my ego, and you've got to find a way, because you're going to pursue things that gratify your ego. But if you're smart about the things that you train into your life to build your ego, is to be humble, to learn. Like my thing became, how fast can I admit that I was wrong? How long can I stare nakedly at my inadequacies so that I can figure out a way forward? Not that I want to be inadequate forever, but I wanted to really, truly be able to look at the truth of who I am, that what I'm good at, what I'm not, what I want to put the energy into growing, and whether or not I'm actually making progress. And that became huge. And the way that you end up doing something like that, the way that you end up making that change is through the repetition of your beliefs. Repetition is probably one of the most underutilized things in the world. And there's really nothing complicated here. You just repeat the things that empower you. So go look at those 25 beliefs that we put up on our website and really make those a part of your daily mantras. Interrupting your negative thoughts with those beliefs, it is incredibly powerful. Now, The way to really see all this through, the way to begin making the shift is not just the repetition of those beliefs, it's the thing that you reward yourself for. And you're gonna need to get very good at emotionally rewarding yourself. And the thing that you wanna begin rewarding yourself for is the process. So Carol Dweck says, praise the process. And I think that that's an extraordinary way to go about it. So many people say, oh my God, you're so smart, that's amazing, you're so good, you're so talented. That's not the process. That's when people get protective. That's when you have a fixed mindset, because you're like, shit, I want to feel like this all the time. I want people to tell me I'm smart all the time. I know because I fell for it. And suddenly you start putting yourself into these areas where you're never being challenged because you want to feel good about yourself. You only feel good about yourself when people tell you that you're smart, good, talented, whatever. And the only time that you hear that is when you're in a non-challenging environment. Now, the only way to grow is to get outside your comfort zone, to be pushing yourself, to be out there, to be challenged, to be in difficult situations, to risk catastrophic fucking failure. And you're not going to do that if you're praising the outcome. But you have to also be cognizant of only praising effective strategy. So that process has to be useful. And we're going to talk more about this when we get into being aware of the false growth mindset. But know that you don't just emptily, if that's a word, praise the process. You have to praise a process that's actually effective. All right, I talked briefly about self-praise. The other thing you have to get good at is self-punishment. This is where people get really squeamish on me. But yes, you have to be able to call yourself to task when you're not doing the things that you said that you were going to do. And getting good at spending a bit of time saying, hey, you didn't do that thing, or you fucked that thing up, and you know better. I expect more from you. Hold yourself to a standard, to not be happy with yourself, maybe even to take something away or not do something that you would otherwise do to celebrate. That becomes really, really important. Effective punishment, not destructive. This is where people get into real trouble. I'm not saying to beat yourself into oblivion. And if you already struggle with depression or low self-esteem, this is not the strategy for you. You need to go address that first. But if you really want to develop all of your potential, you're going to have to find a way to effectively self-punish. So take that word with a grain of salt, look at my intent, see through what is going to be, I know, a triggering word for some people, and really understand what I'm saying. You want to uplift yourself, so you don't want to crush yourself down, but you want to be honest about when you're not living up to your own expectations. And until you can be honest, until you can look nakedly at where you're failing, until you're able to say, that's not okay, and I don't accept that from myself, then you're never gonna make progress. And this goes back to taking total ownership. And guys, I'm begging you, I don't get anything out of, to be honest, I don't get anything out whether you succeed or fail, but I so want people to win. I'm just wired to see other people win. I'm saying this because it is true. I'm saying this because it will serve you well if you can find a way to kick yourself in the ass when you need it without being destructive, without diminishing your sense of self. That's my big thing. Don't ever do anything that diminishes your sense of self. And that brings us to the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, you want to be thinking about the beautiful things that you're trying to bring into the world, the things that you're passionate about, the things that you love, the people that you love, the small things in life that just make things worth living, and never more than 20% in a negative or a dark emotion. If you keep that balance, I think that you'll find that it's very easy to thrive, but so many people reverse it and they spend 80% of their time in negativity. They spend 80% of their time beating themselves up. That's self-defeating. It will never work, and it makes for a miserable life. So you're gonna have to put time and energy into uplifting yourself, into cheering yourself on, into reminding yourself that it's okay to be average, reminding yourself that it's okay for this to be hard, that this is a struggle. And the one thing I would say that you wanna remind yourself it's not okay to do, and that's to give up. You wanna keep making those demands of yourself, keep pushing yourself forward, but spend 80% of your time at least in positivity. All right, as they say, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I wish this weren't so, because it is very hard to, when you have people that you love, that you know are not empowering you. And I'm not saying that you need to cut them out of your life, but I'm saying that you do need to keep them in proportion. You need to be thinking about who are the people that I'm spending the most time with, and seek out people that are going to encourage you. Like I said, one of the biggest changes in my life was when I got into an entrepreneurial organization and people were holding themselves to a standard. They all had growth mindsets. They moved faster than I did, and they just knew they could achieve anything. And being around people that just know it, they just know it to the core of their being, that they can make come true in their life, whatever they want. It's intoxicating because it allows you to then begin believing in yourself. So I want for you guys to find those people. And if you can't find them IRL, you can certainly find them in the Impact Theory University Facebook group. Go in, connect with people, and I'll even widen this out and say, you're the average of the 5 ideas you spend the most time with. So even if you can't connect with real people, start reading, connect with authors, do whatever you have to do to be around ideas that lift you up. All right, Carol Dweck has an amazing notion that she calls the false growth mindset. And this is where a lot of people get themselves in trouble. They think, oh my God, a growth mindset sounds amazing. Of course, I have a growth mindset, because we're all tempted to believe that we only do the things that are awesome and amazing. And what they start doing is they start praising empty process. They start saying things like, well, at least you tried, you gave it effort, effort's all that matters. And that just isn't true. The reality is you cannot praise empty process. That is the false growth mindset. A real growth mindset is about really fucking facing the hard challenges. It's about really accepting where you're weak. It's about really looking at your results. It's about getting obsessed with your results and wanting that. Because remember, your self-esteem is based on being the learner. So it's okay if you're messing up. It's okay if you're not doing the right things. None of that matters. What matters is sincere effort, that you're really giving yourself over to getting better, not playing at getting better, not pretending, actually getting better. Now, all of us have what we'll call fixed mindset triggers. And I'm almost certain I learned that from Carol Dweck. And your mindset triggers are the things that slip you back into a fixed mindset. Like, I will give you mine. There are 2 things that I really wish I were good at, but I don't even pursue, because some part of me believes that it would take too much energy, that maybe those are the limits. It's drawing and singing. And I just realized that sort of floating around those 2 things, I get bizarrely negative. So this is something that you want to identify in your life, whether it's something about intelligence, or if somebody says something to you, like if they tease you and you shut down and it puts you back in that fixed mindset. And when people give you a hard time about something, it makes you feel like, fuck it, like this isn't possible. I worked so hard and I can't get out of this. Whatever those things are for you, you want to identify those. It's pretty much anything that's going to trigger your insecurities, make you feel not smart enough. Those are things that you really, really need to watch out for. You can think of them as areas of poor belief. Figure what those are for you. Watch yourself when you slide into that so that you can get yourself out. The last thing that's a key part of all this is perseverance, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard called grit. And to develop grit is one of the most important things you could do in your life, because it is the thing that allows you to stick through things. Because having a growth mindset is just the foundation. It's just the thing that's going to allow you to grow and develop and get better. But if you don't actually have the fortitude to stick with it, you're never going to improve. And so you will suddenly find yourself making the decision by accident that life is working against you, because you're not sticking with it. You're not giving the process time to take hold. So if you want to stretch yourself, start doing hard things. I think that's an incredibly potent way to develop your grit. This could be a course unto itself, but I will just give you a couple quick things. Cold showers are awesome, and you can stretch the length that you can stay in it. Maybe in the beginning, it's only 15 seconds, then maybe it's 30, then maybe it's 3 minutes, then maybe it's 10 minutes. Doing things like that, beginning to stretch your boundaries. Working out is another super powerful way to do something that's hard, to push yourself. And Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit, gives an amazing definition of what grit is. She says it's passion and perseverance over time. Now, passion, we could really go down a rabbit hole with that one. That one's critically important, but I will just say this. Passion is made up of interest and mastery. And you put those 2 together and you do it over time, and you have grit. So go out, develop grit. All right, guys, as you're going through this, remember, you're not perfect. You're gonna get triggered into a fixed mindset from time to time. Things are going to seem impossibly overwhelming. You're going to feel like a victim and wanna blame other people, and you're gonna look outward. That's going to happen. And it's about being aware of it. It's about catching it. It's about using your beliefs to interrupt those patterns, using that repetition, coming back to those things. You can think of them as mantras, but reinforcing these empowering beliefs over and over and over. And if you do that on a long enough timeline, This is going to become second nature, and that's really your goal. But I just want to remind you, this is a process. So don't worry about, in the beginning, if you're stumbling a lot, if you're having to come back to your beliefs over and over and over, and it feels really hard and it feels super manual, that's just part of the process. And remember, our favorite cheesy quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So I hope you guys will choose to believe that you can do anything you set your mind to. I hope you will choose to believe that your talent and intelligence are not fixed traits, that they are changeable, they're malleable. That is the very foundation of a growth mindset. And I hope that you choose to believe that your energies will be rewarded with increased skill, and that you remember that the word yet is magical. Tack it on to any statement of inadequacy. I'm not good at this yet. And you will find that it opens up a world for you because it encourages the effort, and action cures all. All right, guys, that's it for this section. Come back for section 3, and I will see you there. Until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care.